On a cold, rain-swept night shift at a fast food restaurant, 22-year-old Tiana Williams was diligently working when she noticed a small, drenched and clearly hungry boy standing outside the window. Without a moment's hesitation, she quietly prepared a warm meal, paying for it with her own tip money. Unbeknownst to her, the owner of the restaurant chain had witnessed the entire act and was about to present her with a life-changing opportunity. Before we delve into this incredible story, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The night was frigid, soaked in a relentless drizzle that blurred the neon glow of the fast food establishment on a forgotten street corner. A single fluorescent bulb above the drive-thru flickered erratically, casting erratic shadows across the rain-slicked, cracked pavement. Inside, the store hummed with the low thrum of overhead lights, almost deserted save for the faint sizzle of the fryers and the heavy scent of cooking oil. This location was in a neglected part of town with rows of boarded-up storefronts, payday loan offices and pawn shops scarring the block. It was the kind of neighborhood where people hurried, heads down, and patrol cars cruised by but rarely stopped unless trouble brewed. At this late hour, long past the dinner rush and not quite closing, the store felt like a stagnant bubble of routine until the boy appeared. He stood by the window, his breath misting the glass, rainwater dripping from his sleeves onto the bricks below. 9, maybe 10 years old, his oversized hoodie was soaked and clung to his slender frame. He didn't knock or wave. He simply gazed at the illuminated menu boards inside with a quiet hunger that spoke of more than just a missed meal. His eyes weren't desperate, they were reserved. The only staff on the night shift were Tom, a mid-30s white man who seemed perpetually annoyed, and Tiana Williams. Tiana, 22, small-framed with a neat natural puff pulled back, worked with a swift, focused efficiency as if every second counted. She wiped down trays and counted sauce packets while Tom leaned against the ice machine, engrossed in his phone. Tom spotted the child through the glass and snorted, "Another stray. They always show up when it rains," he muttered, making no effort to lower his voice. He didn't move to open the door. Instead, he rolled his eyes and resumed tapping his screen. Tiana heard him. She turned slightly, her gaze shifting to the window, locking onto the boy. Her hands paused for a half-second, just long enough for something to stir within her. Not pity, but a memory. She had seen that look before, not just in others but in a mirror. She said nothing. She didn't ask who he was or why he was out there. She simply looked long enough to understand, with a knowing that transcended words. Tom glanced her way. "Don't even think about it. You know they'll eat it and run. No thank you, no nothing. Half of them are probably lying anyway," he added with a sneer, "unless it's one of your cousins or something." Tiana didn't respond. She'd been here 6 months, and this kind of behavior wasn't new. The snide remarks, the way customers doubted her ability to get their order right, how managers watched her more closely than others when the register was short. Tom wasn't the worst, just the most overtly obnoxious. He liked to act as if her presence was an inconvenience, as if she'd only gotten the job through a diversity quota. But she was accustomed to being both invisible and too visible simultaneously. She kept her head down, kept her hands moving, but tonight was different. Because outside, a boy just like her 10 years ago stood in the rain, too hungry to ask for help, too proud to beg. Tiana didn't move immediately. She finished stacking the trays, replaced the sanitizer bottle under the counter, then quietly walked to the back cooler. Her hands were steady, but her chest felt a slow, burning pressure, like heat building underwater, deep and controlled. She didn't need to look out the window again. The image of the boy's soaked face and hollow eyes was already etched in her mind, more vivid than any security footage. She'd worn that same expression once, though no one back then had cared to remember it. Inside the walk-in cooler, the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. She crouched and selected a fresh burger patty, a warm bun, a box of fries. Not the leftovers they usually gave out when feeling generous. This was a complete meal, the kind of combo that came with a drink and extra sauce. A meal with dignity. He didn't hesitate. She moved swiftly but precisely. She wrapped it tightly like any other order, pressed the label machine and typed "combo test internal only." It wasn't a real test combo, but it was close enough that if anyone reviewed the tapes, it could pass as quality control. She'd seen the higher-ups do it plenty of times, pulling food for training purposes. Tonight she used the same loophole, not for herself but for someone who hadn't even asked. As she packed the bag, she could feel Tom's stare from across the counter. He finally stepped away from the ice machine, walked over with his cocky, half-limping stride, leaning on the steel prep table with a smirk. "Let me guess," he said, eyeing the bag. "Taste test, huh? You sure it's for QA, or is this your new side hustle feeding random strays?" Tiana didn't look at him. "Test internal." "I logged it," she replied evenly. Tom scoffed, louder now, seeking attention. "Come on, me. You're really going to pull this after what happened last month? Remember that lady who scammed us for free meals 3 times in a row? You keep doing this Mother Teresa thing and they'll take it out of your paycheck, not mine." He leaned in a little closer. "Or maybe you like being taken advantage of?" Tiana finally turned to face him. Her eyes didn't flare, she didn't snap back. She simply met his gaze, steady and firm. He didn't ask for anything. Tom raised both hands. "Right, because that makes it better. Maybe he's smarter than the rest, just stands there looking sad and waits for suckers like you to crack." His words weren't new. They were the same recycled warnings she'd grown up hearing about how kindness was weakness, how soft hearts got chewed up and spit out. But tonight they felt hollow. She stepped past him, slid open the register drawer, took a crumpled $10 bill from her wallet, and placed it inside the till beneath the receipt paper roll, where no one would look unless they were truly digging. Tom let out a short mocking laugh. "Oh, you're really doing this?" Tiana didn't answer. She grabbed a napkin, wrote nothing on it and folded it neatly inside the bag. Then she walked out from behind the counter. The smell of hot food wafted up. The front windows were fogged, the boy still there, barely visible, his outline framed by the glow of rain-slicked neon. She opened the door gently, stepping out just enough for the wind to catch the hem of her apron. The boy flinched back instinctively, then froze, unsure. Tiana didn't speak. She didn't ask his name or explain herself. She simply knelt slightly, placed the bag on the concrete ledge beside the window and stood back. Their eyes met, his full of hesitation, hers calm and unwavering. She gave him the smallest nod, not permission, not charity, just acknowledgement. He grabbed the bag, turned and ran. No thank you, no wave, just disappeared into the gray mist beyond the sidewalk. Tiana exhaled slowly, not relief, not satisfaction, but something deeper, something akin to memory. When she stepped back inside, Tom was waiting, both brows raised and arms crossed. "You really think that did something?" he asked, still half laughing. "You think you're making the world better one happy meal at a time?" She walked past him, picked up the towel she'd left earlier and wiped down the counter again. Her voice when it came was quiet but solid. "I used to be him," she said. Tom blinked. He hadn't expected that. His grin faded for just a second, confused, perhaps uncomfortable. Then he turned away, muttering, "Whatever. Not my business." But the shift in the air was noticeable. Even the hum of the fryer seemed lower, as if the room had heard and was holding its breath. Tiana kept working. She didn't explain further, didn't look for a pat on the back. She'd done what needed to be done, not because she pitied the kid, not because she wanted recognition, but because once, when she was 9 and waiting outside a bus stop at 10 p.m. with an empty stomach and torn shoes, no one had truly seen her. Tonight she had seen someone, and that in itself was enough. The rain had returned, not the gentle drizzle of last week, but a steadier, colder rhythm that tapped against the front windows like 1,000 quiet reminders of everything outside. Every person still walking, still waiting, still surviving. Inside the restaurant, the same fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their washed-out glow across empty booths and wet floor tiles. It was just past midnight, and the street outside looked as it always did at this hour. Deserted, tired, damp. Tiana was halfway through restocking the sauce bins when something in her chest stirred. She didn't know why at first, just that peculiar shift, like something nudging the air. Not panic, not warning, just attention, as if her instincts had learned to tune into silence when it grew too still. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on her apron, her gaze drawn to the entrance. The motion sensor above the door hadn't gone off, but someone had been here. A faint scuff mark on the wet doormat, the plastic flyer holder by the door slightly bumped out of place. She moved closer, eyes narrowing, and then she saw it. Folded paper, carefully wedged under the metal strip at the base of the glass door. Small, soggy at the edges, barely holding its shape. She bent down and picked it up, her fingers brushing against the cold floor. It was a napkin, or perhaps a piece torn from something larger, folded twice clumsily, as if someone had done it in a hurry or with small, unsure hands. Her first instinct was that it might be trash. a flyer, a receipt someone dropped. But when she unfolded it, everything else fell quiet. The pencil lines were shaky, dark in some places, faint in others, pressed so hard they almost ripped the paper. And the words were just 5, unevenly spaced, no punctuation. "Thank you for letting me eat." There was no name, no drawing, no explanation, but she knew. She knew those words had cost something to write. Not money, not time, but courage, effort, the kind of effort it takes to believe someone will care enough to read them. Tiana didn't cry right away. Her throat tightened first, then her shoulders slumped a little as if something heavy had shifted inside her. Not pain, but release. She leaned back against the wall beside the drink machine, the crumpled note still in her hand, and closed her eyes. That one line pulled at something she hadn't touched in years, a locked-up space full of nights she didn't talk about. Nights on park benches, in group shelters, sitting beside vending machines hoping someone would forget their change. Back then she'd convinced herself that people only helped if you begged loud enough, if you made yourself small and pitiful enough to be noticed. She hated that feeling, the shame of needing, the shame of being ignored. But this boy, whoever he was, hadn't begged, hadn't asked, and she hadn't needed him to. Tom didn't notice. He was out back smoking again, probably texting some girl he'd ghost by Friday. Tiana preferred it that way. Just her, the hum of the drink machine, the soft thud of rain against the window, and this note, this fragile scrap of truth that suddenly meant more than most conversations she'd had in months. She read it again. "Thank you for letting me eat." Not for the food, not for the fries or the burger. He was thanking her for permission, for not questioning his right to be fed. That's what cut deepest, because it meant he'd been questioned before. Maybe by adults, maybe by cops, maybe by the people who were supposed to care. And yet, even in that thank you, there was no guilt, no fear, just quiet recognition. Tiana folded the paper again, gently this time, and slipped it into her apron pocket like something sacred. She wasn't sure what she'd do with it yet. She just knew she couldn't throw it away. The rest of her shift passed in a kind of quiet blur. She filled ketchup dispensers, wiped down booths, loaded trash into the bin behind the kitchen. Her body moved automatically, but her mind was still with that boy. She wondered where he went after running, if he had a place to sleep, if someone had yelled at him for being gone, if he had siblings, if he'd come back again. She didn't expect it, but part of her hoped. She glanced out the window a few times that night, even though she knew he wouldn't return so soon. She wasn't looking for gratitude. She just wanted to make sure he was okay, that he hadn't vanished like so many others who slipped through the cracks and got swallowed by the cold machinery of the world. Near the end of her shift, while mopping near the front door, she paused. The paper was still in her pocket. She took it out again and smoothed it against her palm. It looked so small now, barely anything, but it was more real than most of the praise she'd ever received. It was simple and honest, and it reminded her that some choices weren't about grand gestures or big change. Sometimes it was just seeing someone when the world chose to look away. She thought of what Tom had said a week ago. "You're not saving anyone." Maybe not, but tonight someone had felt safe enough to say thank you, and for her that meant everything. The central office of Bell's Fried Chicken sat on the edge of an industrial park, just off the freeway. A squat, beige building with no sign out front, just a small metal plaque on the door that read, "Operations." Inside, the air smelled faintly of copier toner and burnt coffee. Monitors buzzed behind closed glass rooms, and employees walked the halls with headsets and clipboards, speaking in acronyms. Most of them had never worked a fryer, never swept a floor at 3 a.m., but Marcus Bell had, and he never forgot it. He still had an office there, tucked into the back of the building, just behind the security desk. No windows, just a sturdy desk, a dented filing cabinet, and a battered wooden chair that had moved with him through 4 locations. At 61, Bell was built like a brick wall, with silver at his temples and permanent creases in his forehead that made him look like he was always thinking hard, even when he wasn't. His office didn't have pictures of family. It had snapshots of his old crews, teams from the early days smiling in grease-stained uniforms in front of newly opened stores. He called them the real foundation. On Thursday morning, he was sitting in that old chair with a black coffee cooling beside his elbow and a monitor pulled close. He didn't usually review security footage himself anymore. There was a team for that. But every few weeks, out of old habit or maybe boredom, he'd pick a store at random, pull up the recent overnight feed and scrub through it like flipping pages in a journal. That night he picked store 17 Elman Rosewood, Southside, not one of their best performers, always struggling with staffing. He remembered some write-ups there recently, some trouble with delivery accuracy. Still, he clicked the file open, let the fast-forward blur roll across the screen. Most of it was what he expected. 2 employees behind the counter, dead air, a couple of late-night drive-through orders. But then he saw something strange. Around 12:19 a.m., the front register camera caught a movement near the window. Belle leaned in. A boy, small, still standing outside in the rain, staring in through the glass. He slowed the footage, watched as the young black woman behind the counter, thin frame, tight puff tied back, a tired but focused posture, paused mid-task. She looked at the boy long enough that it meant something. The guy next to her barely glanced up, said something. She said nothing. And then Belle watched, arms crossed tightly now as she went to the kitchen, assembled a meal, typed something at the screen. She walked with intention, not hesitation, not fear, not even performance. When she slid the food outside and the boy ran, Belle saw the moment her face changed. Not dramatically, not for show, but he caught it. The soft drop in her shoulders, the way her mouth curved, not in sadness, not joy, but recognition. He hit pause, rewound, watched it again. People don't see much in grainy footage, but Marcus Bell had spent a lifetime watching people move behind counters, under pressure, in front of angry customers. He knew the difference between someone doing a favor and someone doing what they believe is right, whether they're caught or not. He didn't recognize her. That store had high turnover. But he knew the look. It was the look of someone who still remembered hunger, still remembered being unseen. He'd worn it himself once, in a gas station bathroom, wiping ketchup off his shirt before a job interview at 19. He watched her step back in, watched her coworker make a comment, watched her ignore him, calmly place money into the till. Then, clear as day, he saw her say it, no sound, but he could read her lips. I used to be him. Bell leaned back in his chair, arms resting on the sides. He didn't move for a full minute. Outside the door, someone knocked, probably needing a signature, but he didn't answer. He stared at the frozen frame of her face mid-sentence, then reached for a sticky note and wrote down the timestamp. 12:19 a.m. date, store, camera angle. He wanted that clip saved. He didn't call the manager, didn't file a report. He didn't need a meeting or a warning sent down the chain. Not yet. Instead, 3 nights later, he drove himself across town. The Southside location hadn't changed since the last time he'd been there 5 years ago. Yellow paint chipped at the corners, a broken tile near the door. Inside it was quiet, rain again tapping steadily against the windows. Only 2 people on the floor. A white man with tired eyes and slumped posture leaning near the soda machine, and the young woman from the footage cleaning trays with the same focused energy. Bell didn't speak to her, not then. He ordered a sandwich, sat in the far corner booth and watched. She worked with quiet precision, never rushing, never dragging. When a customer came in with a complicated order, she smiled, got every item right and offered extra sauce without being asked. Bell noticed the coworker roll his eyes once and disappear into the back, leaving her to manage the front solo. She didn't complain, didn't sigh, just kept going. There was something in her, the way she moved, the way she held space, that reminded him why he started this business in the first place. Not just to serve food but to serve people. The ones no one else saw. The ones the system either forgot or punished for not fitting into its neat boxes. He stayed for an hour, sipped his drink slowly, pretended to read the news on his phone, but what he was really doing was watching someone who hadn't asked to be seen but deserved to be. And when he left, he didn't say a word, didn't thank her, didn't tip, just nodded once from across the dining room, almost imperceptibly. She didn't notice. She was wiping down the booth near the window, her eyes still quietly focused, like always. He stepped out into the rain, pulled his coat tighter and got into his car. The footage was real, the instinct was real, but seeing her in person, seeing that it wasn't just a moment but a pattern, a way she carried herself, that confirmed it. Marcus Bell didn't believe in rewarding people for show, but he believed in impact. And the way she'd looked at that boy, the way she hadn't demanded anything back, not even acknowledgement, it told him everything he needed to know. She didn't give that meal to be a hero, she gave it because it was the right thing to do. And for Belle that meant it was time for her to be seen. It was a Wednesday night, slow like most midweek shifts, with the same pale overhead lights buzzing and the fryers hissing softly like white noise. Tiana was at the counter organizing sauce packets by expiration date. Something no one asked her to do but she did anyway because order, even in small things, gave her some sense of control. Outside, rain misted the windows again, faint and steady, the kind that seemed to settle over everything without fully arriving. Tom was in the back taking a call, his voice muffled behind the supply room door. The air smelled like warm grease and lemon cleaner. Tiana's hands moved on instinct, her mind half drifting. The napkin note still lived in her apron pocket, folded soft from being opened and read too many times. It wasn't about sentiment. It was about reminding herself of something solid, that she had made a decision without permission and it had mattered. The front door opened with a soft chime. She looked up, expecting a delivery driver or maybe a tired regular looking for coffee. Instead, it was the older man from a few nights ago, the one who'd sat in the far booth nursing a drink, the one who hadn't spoken. Now he walked toward the counter, slow but steady, his coat damp from the drizzle, his eyes fixed on her with a strange, unreadable calm. Tiana straightened. "Welcome in. Can I help you with something?" she asked, already reaching for the register. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket and placed it on the counter. A plain white envelope. Then he looked her in the eye, his voice low, steady but with weight behind it. "You're Tiana Williams, right?" She blinked. "Yes. My name's Marcus Bell." There was a beat of silence. She knew the name. Everyone who worked in this chain did. Founder, CEO, veteran, the man who started the company in a food truck after leaving the army. But he didn't carry himself like a CEO. No security, no entourage, just him and that envelope. "I've been watching your store," he tapped the envelope gently. "Not just the numbers, the people. Inside is a formal offer. Assistant night manager with a raise, benefits, upgrade, training credits if you're still in school. It's yours if you want it." Tiana didn't move. Her hands stayed flat on the counter, but her fingers curled slightly. She'd imagined 100 ways she might be acknowledged in this job. Maybe a staff meeting where someone mentioned her name, maybe a good review from a mystery shopper. But this. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "Why me?" Belle gave the smallest smile. Not smug, not performative, just real. "As I saw what you did. The kid, the meal, the way you paid for it yourself. You didn't do it for credit. You didn't do it to be seen. You did it because you remember what it feels like to be that hungry, that invisible." Tiana's throat tightened, but she kept her chin level. He continued, "I built this company to give second chances to people like us. But somewhere along the way the system started rewarding the loudest, not the kindest. Watching you reminded me why I started all this in the first place. You didn't just follow rules. You chose right when no one was watching." She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was the new position offer, printed on clean letterhead. Shift leader, night operations, effective next pay period, a 42% raise, training credit for culinary or business programs. It was real. He touched the paper like it might disappear. Belle stepped back, giving her space. "I don't give these out often, only when someone shows me something I can't ignore." "You didn't wait for permission to lead, Tiana. You already are." Tiana stood still for a long moment, then finally let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She looked up at him, not as a CEO, not as a stranger, but as someone who, in one rare intersection of experience, understood. "I didn't think anyone noticed," she said softly. "I did," he replied. "And so did that kid." She smiled. It wasn't big or dramatic, but it was full of weight and history and pride that didn't have to shout. By the time Belle turned to leave, she had tucked the offer back into her apron. She didn't rush to celebrate, she didn't post it on the staff board. She just stood for a moment behind the counter, staring out through the rain-spotted glass toward the street, remembering another night, another face, another small act that had led to this moment. The register beeped. A new customer stepped inside. Tiana straightened, smoothed her apron and greeted them the same way she always did. But behind her, taped to the inside of the locker door where no one else would see it, was a napkin, faded pencil mark still clear enough to read, "Thank you for letting me eat." And now, beneath it, a new badge sat waiting in her locker. A rectangle of brushed metal with engraved letters that felt heavier than gold. Shift Leader T. Williams. She hadn't needed permission to care, and she never needed validation to know it mattered. But finally she had been seen. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.